Good evening, everybody. My name is Eric Whiting, and I'm going to show you the first part of DataDrop. And so it's going to be the first feature, and I'm going to talk about the code a little bit. Just as an overview, DataDrop is an application that will take data files in various formats and export them into other various formats. For example, the first feature I'm going to show you is the application is going to take either an Excel or a JSON file and export it into Excel, JSON, or a database insert script. The point of something like this would be if you have an Excel file, for example, and you wanted, for some reason, to export that into a JSON file, and there's like thousands of rows or something like that, you would have a hard time doing that, like scripting or whatever. So this application just is going to just go ahead and do that for you. Before I talk about the code, I think I'll just go ahead and show you an example. So the example I'm going to use first is I'm going to show you this JSON file that we're going to use as an example. Okay, give me just a second. With Notepad. Okay, so here is the JSON file. There are two objects in it, one for me and one for some guy named Bob. And you see we've got the same columns here, but we've got two different objects. So if you were writing in JavaScript and you had a class called person, I guess, it might come out looking like this in JSON. You got name, job, age, and you might have two different objects. And sometimes if you're doing whatever, you could end up hitting a service that sends back a bunch of these JSON objects for whatever reason, and you want to put them into Excel or something. And you could imagine that I had like 100 of these and I wanted to put them into Excel. I'd have to pivot them and then make sure that they go into the right place and all that stuff. So this application is actually going to do that for me. So here is the example file, and I have to close it so that I can use it in the application. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. All right. So I'm going to start this up. Here's the GUI. The source data type is going to be JSON. We are going to use that JSON file. And we're going to show available attributes. So these are the attributes that are available in that JSON file. If you remember, there was a name, job, and age attributes. And here I'm going to decide which of these I'm going to take. So in this example, I'm going to take name, job, and age. But if I was exporting this to an Excel or an insert file, you know, maybe there's like 15 different columns and I only need 6 of them or something. So in that case, I'm only going to take a few of them. But in this case, I'm going to take all of them so I can show you how this works. All right, so destination data type, we're going to do it to Excel, okay? Excel, we're going to call this demo from JSON, okay? And I'm just going to hit that generate file, and you can't see my other screen, so I'm looking. Okay, it worked. Let me show you what it came out like. All right, so here's the Excel file that came out of that. You can see it made the headers from the attributes that were available that I picked, so name, job, and age. And then it took the values, Eric under name, Bob under name, programmer DBA 30 and 33. And that is basically how it works. Okay, I'll show you a couple of other examples. And in this next example, I'm not going to save that. And I'm also going to delete that file. Okay, let me show you the Excel file we're going to use for this example. Okay, so this Excel file, it has kind of a similar data shape. Name, job, age. This time I put a few more values in here. So Eric, Bob, Zach, Jess. All of these people are fake except for me, obviously. All right, so we're going to import that, and we're going to, from Excel, we're going to use test Excel, show available attributes. It's going to be the same. Oh, uh-oh. Okay, so this isn't something I accounted for, so let me just go ahead and start it back over. All right, so from Excel to, where is it? There it is. All right, show available attributes. There we go. Name, and this time we're just gonna do name and job. Okay, and we're going to put this one to JSON, and we're gonna call this demonstration, or let's say demo from Excel. Boom. Okay, so you can't see my file explorer, but there. All right, so it exported the JSON objects here. And let me show you from, okay, here's another example of what it can do. So maybe you want to go from Excel to Excel, but you only want to take the 2 out of the 3 columns. I don't know why you would do that, but in case you wanted to, you can. Of course, in the source file, you could always hide those, but just in case you don't want to, you can also do this. So I exported that one from Excel. It just kept the 2 columns I wanted, and that's that. Okay, so now for the final part of what it can do so far after the first feature is an insert script. So for the insert script, it'll come out to a .sql file, and for this, we're going to use this text box to give it the file name, and then, or to give it the table name, because it needs to say insert into whatever table values, yada, yada, yada. So in that case, we're going to give it a table name here. I'm going to say like that's employee. And then the file name is going to be generated. It's going to be the date plus the table name. So we're going to go ahead and generate that file. And let me open this. All right. So once again, it took just those 2 attributes that I picked. Name and job. So insert into employee, name, job, values, and then here were all the values that were in that Excel file. This looks pretty simple, but if you had an Excel file that was, millions of rows, or well, I don't know if millions is possible, but say thousands of rows, and you just wanted a couple of columns from them. There are plugins with Excel where you can do something like this, but in this case, well, you know what? Let me show you it from JSON. So say you got a JSON file. Maybe you had an API or somebody sent you this JSON file and it looks like this, and you wanted maybe just the name and job. And let's do all of them. And you wanted to generate an insert script off of that. We're going to say employee again. I'm going to say employee 2 just so I know which one it is in my file explorer. Okay. Open with Notepad. All right. So you took the JSON file and you pushed it through DataDrop, and you got this SQL file for your inserts. And that is basically how it works. These are just the first features. The next features are going to be XML and possibly a way to connect to the database and actually do this without generating a SQL file and then maybe just inserting it right away. The problem with that is that there will have to be a lot of checks for if those tables exist, if those columns are there, yada, yada, yada. In that case, I would probably skip all that value checking in the sake of time just to make the feature. But anyway, let me go ahead and talk about the code a little bit. So I started out by writing, well, to be honest, I started out by doing it completely the wrong way, just to make sure that I could actually do it, to kind of get a feel for how this whole application would work. But then after I kind of got a proof of concept, I went ahead and tried to do it the right way. And so what I have here is, first of all, I have interfaces, right? So these interfaces are, I just have two. There's one for to data format and one for write to file. And I'll explain a little bit better what these do, but I just want you to see that this I transformations exists. Um, so then I wrote an abstract class called data format. Data format implements these interfaces for I transformations, and this is an abstract class, so you can't exactly instantiate this, but all of the data formats, the destination data formats, are derived from this class. So every time I make a class like a JSON data format class, or I don't have it up here, Excel data format class, and I'll show you those in a second. Um, I can count on those classes having, first of all, these interfaces. So to data format and write to file. So to data format is going to take, well, I'll tell you that in a second. So I'll know that it has those functions, and then it's going to have an attribute called data type, Excel, JSON, whatever. Data points. These are key value pairs that are that represent the data that is in the source format. So I believe I have that up. If I don't, so the data format class, or the data point class, this is it. Attribute value keep. Keep is when you saw me clicking those available attributes into the selected attributes list. Keep is a flag that it decides if that's going to be a data point that is kept. And there's a little function here for toggling that, just to make life easier. So anyway, so it's each data format is going to have a list of those data point objects. If you don't know what a list is, it's basically a better data structure than an array, because you don't have to know how big the list is going to be before you compile. I guess it's kind of like a vector. Another object we're going to have is the to data format, which this is from here. So I had to, in order for this class to be, to properly implement this, I had to write this line in. So to data format is coming from here. You'll see if I delete that, it's going to turn red because I'm not implementing that interface. So yada yada yada, I can't from to data format, so let's go ahead and put it back in. All right. Same thing with write to file. Write to file is going to be the functions from the different data formats that create those files. And then there is a constructor method that takes in a string of its data type. I'm actually not really sure why this is still here. I did play around with this a lot, and I can't think of any reason that this actually still needs to exist, but for the moment it does. And then a function for get selected data points. The reason that this method is actually fleshed out in this class is because it's the same for every subclass. Basically, the selected data points is every data point in the data point list that has a keep value of true. You see, I used a cool little lambda here. I always feel kind of cool when I make lambdas, or when I use lambdas, but I'm kind of a nerd. So let me talk about one of the derived classes. So let's take Excel, for example. So this Excel data format class inherits the data format abstract class. So every method has to be an override. So I'll start here. The constructor class. This is it has to implement. That's what this is. The base class, which is the data format class, and send that data type value. So in this case, it would be Excel. Again, I'm not really sure what I was using this for, or what I was planning on using this for, but it's kind of useless right now. And then we have the toDataFormat method, which is going to take the data points of this object, the list of data points, and put them into a format that is equal to the kind of document it's going to, I guess you could say. So in this example, it's going to get all of its data points. And remember, each data point is basically just a key value pair. It's a string, and a bool. And so each one is like, so attribute would be the name. So in that file I showed you, there would be either be name, job, or age. The value is either Eric programmer or 30, and keep, that's obviously either true or false. So it's not truly a key value pair, but in practice it pretty much is. So let me go back. And so that's what the toDataFormat method does, is it puts those data points into a format that can easily be written to the destination file type. So here, in order to get the Excel string or the Excel data, I have a list of string arrays, and this takes the distinct attribute names, because if so like in that Excel example, I had 3 rows, which means that I have 3 different data points with the attribute name of name and the attribute name of age and job. So this one is selecting the distinct and putting it to a list, so I only get those 3, just name, job, and age. That way it doesn't show up like 9 times or however many times. Headers starts off as nothing, and then I add the data point to it, and so if it's already got something, I go ahead and give it a comma and give it the next data point, because I then split it by the comma so that I can actually get an array, which I will push to the header row list, which I do here. So it adds that here. And then for this to work, it needs a header range value, which is this kind of the start of this. I'm not entirely sure what all of this does. This is an example I found from the website for the library I'm using, which is this one. This one is actually really bad. I wouldn't recommend using this. There's some better ones out there. But anyway, so I'm not totally sure what's going on here entirely. I just know that I need a list of string arrays in order to write to the Excel file. So that's what this toDataFormat is doing. And then that function is being called in the write to file function or method, whatever you want to call it. And what it does is this function takes in the directory location, which I set with a configuration class. Where is my configuration? There it is. So this is just a real simple whatever. This is where I'm starting. If I were to sell this or something, I would definitely make this more user-friendly, but if you end up pulling this for some reason, go into this file and change this to whatever you want it to be. Anyway, so so it takes the directory location and the file name, and it puts them together to get the full path of the file name that's going to be written to. So in this case, it'll be dot whatever you gave it in the form .xlsx plus the directory location. All right, so then we have this using Excel package. I can kind of talk through this. Again, I'm not a whole lot sure why some of these things are needed. For these I made this return this object, and it has these keys in order to get the different pieces of data it needs to write to the Excel file. So it gets all of those after uh, after generating them, and then just writes to the file and then saves it. And that's how that one works. This is actually a bad example. I'm sorry for showing you this one. Let me show you the database one. Okay, so this is the last one I worked on. So okay, so once again, we've got the to-data format, which is, in this case, is writing a string, and that's just going to get written to the .sql file. It takes in the data formats, or the data points, and then does its magic in order to create these different SQL commands in order to write that file, and then ends with a semicolon. And then that method is being called by this writes file, and because here I have the insert statement equals the to-data format, which returns the string. The table name, what I did was I took the file name, which is generated in that form where you write in the table name. So in this case, I had to take out in the form, it's passed over here as a with the file extension, so I had to take it out. Just to get the table name, I take out the .sql, and then this is the, anyway. All right, and then to actually name the file, I give it the month or the date and the file name, or the table name. But anyway, so then I write the insert statement by running the to-data format method, and then using StreamWriter, I just write to this file the string for the insert statement, and that's it. And it saves when it's done, and that's how it works. So yeah, so once I wrote the first thing I did was the JSON data format, and I'm intentionally not showing it to you because it's not very pretty, because it's the first one I did. But once I wrote that, and I wrote the class for the JSON data format class, it was pretty easy after that, because I was using interfaces and abstract classes. So at that point, it's just, you're still doing the same thing. It's just the things that are different are putting it into a format that that data format expects. So yeah, that is feature number, actually I think it's feature number 2 for DataDrop, the Excel and JSON to Excel, JSON, or SQL. I look forward to showing you the next feature, and yeah.